Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, James and the Giant Peach. These are literary classics. Most kids learn to love these books and eventually love literature because they've read these books as kids. Why? Well, because Roald Dahl wove these amazing narratives with very quirky and sometimes even dark worlds. And it was better than your typical kids' book. I mean, the Hardy Boys are fine, but Roald Dahl, that's cool. And now the left is trying to rewrite these books because they're not politically correct. They don't fit into 2023 sensibilities. A couple of examples here. You can't call Augustus Gloop fat. You can't call Mrs. Trunchbull from Matilda great horsey face. You can't call her the most formidable female. You can't refer to Oompa Loompas as small men or tiny. Come on. Mark Hemingway is a senior writer over at Real Clear Investigations, and his latest article over at the Federalist really sort of shines a light on what the left is doing here and compares it to what they accuse conservatives of doing. The column at the Federalist is "The Censorship of Roald Dahl Shows the Left's Book Banning Accusations Are Utterly Disingenuous." Yeah, Mark Hemingway, Ron DeSantis just wants to make sure that there are no smutty books in public libraries for kids. And what they're doing to Roald Dahl here is just bizarre, the rewriting posthumously of a great author.
So let me get this straight. We have to censor beloved children's author Roald Dahl to remove words like fat and ugly because those will damage children if they read them. And yet somehow it's this major crime if people speak up because they say that overt sexuality, even pornography appearing in school libraries, is a problem because, they're just not open-minded enough about, the need for kids to learn about sex. I mean,
Yeah.
you just can't square the circle on this at all. Either ideas presented to children in a certain age are harmful or they're not. And
Yeah.
I think we know they agree that they can be harmful.
It's a great point. I mean, the books that are now in question in public school libraries, accessible to 12-year-olds in states like Virginia and other states are having these battles right now, or the books that have been taken out of school libraries because legislation was successfully passed in Florida. I couldn't describe those books right now and what's in them without violating certain protocols. You can't even read these books at a school board meeting to
Right.
show how offensive they are. I mean, that's what the real concern here is about what's appropriate for our children in a government-run school.
Right. And actually, what you just described about the school board meetings has happened more than once, where concerned parents have come in and they have tried to read what they have found in their children's libraries, only to be shut down by the school board itself on the grounds that it's too profane. And at the same time, the school board is shutting down the parents from reading this out loud in a public meeting. They're
Yeah,
defending the inclusion of the same book. I
yeah.
mean, it's it's just absolutely ridiculous. But it also gets to this thing that, like, so I've been on the board of a private school for many years, and obviously you have to make certain decisions about what's been the best interest of kids, and you have to make decisions that are age appropriate. I mean, this is just a standard aspect of education. But what is really disingenuous and frustrating is that people confusing making age appropriate decisions about what children should be read and exposed to with book banning. Those two things are not different at all. And in this case, you see the situation here with Roald Dahl, where it's not clear whether they're going to print the unexpurgated original versions of the books at any point in the future, right?
Right.
So that's like actual, like, permanent censorship, bordering on book banning. Or in the case of the Dr. Seuss estate 2 years ago, where they just decided we're going to altogether stop printing several classic children's books over, minor matters of political correctness. That's actual book banning. That's a very different thing than saying, well, maybe a kid who's 8 years old shouldn't read this.
And this pendulum swing where they audaciously do this, they say we're going to rewrite Dr. Seuss or we're going to take Dr. Seuss books out of the school libraries because they're politically incorrect or what have you. I don't even see the political incorrectness in Roald Dahl, and we'll get into some of the specifics in a moment. Or in this case, Roald Dahl, they go ahead and audaciously ban them or rewrite them. Conservatives object, and suddenly we're the ones who are fighting a culture war. We're the ones who are making a big deal out of Dr. Seuss and Roald Dahl. It's really quite a jujitsu trick the left engages in.
Right. That's the entire game. It's to stuff, children's libraries, or libraries in general, with revisionist history, watered down critical race theory, in under the guise of anti-racism, All sorts of, ideas about gender ideology that everyone in America broadly agreed were crazy until about 15 minutes ago. And then, when conservatives object to this happening, all of a sudden you get called a book banner. Clearly, like, this is an ideological crusade that they're waging, and you saying you don't want your kids as part of that crusade, somehow gets, transferred into this notion that, you are, like the dad in Footloose that, wants to ban dancing and, throw, Dostoevsky on the pile to be burned. It's
Right.
absurd.
Mark, let's talk about some of these specifics too, because listen, I think, or listen, Roald Dahl is some of the books are a little, it's like Grimm's fairy tales. It's like, wow, that is kind of dark. But at the same time, there's no doubting the brilliance of the literature involved here. And
Right.
these books, James and the Giant Peach, Matilda, The Witches, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, of course, these have made an indelible mark on children in their growth in appreciation of literature. You mentioned they banned the word fat. The
Yeah.
context of fat, this is in referring to Augustus Gloop, the gluttonous child in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Every single one of these children who are the poorly behaved children, it's supposed to be a lesson. We're supposed to learn that you shouldn't be gluttonous. You shouldn't eat everything in sight. Are we not allowed to make that case anymore to children? How are we supposed to teach them?
I mean, that's clearly what they're trying to do. I mean, in some of these, other things, like, they're clearly trying to just establish new norms. And the fact of the matter is, Roald Dahl was written at a time where, we broadly agreed things like gluttony were bad, and,
Yeah.
perhaps being overweight is not something that you should be proud of. And some of this stuff is just, tremendously egregious. I mean, they've introduced all this weird gender neutral language that wasn't there previously. I mean, that's just offensive to the English language, But again, they're doing that because they want to establish new norms around gender. I mean, the most obvious thing of that is there's a passage there from the Witches where, it refers to the witches being bald. And instead, they've inserted a whole new sentence saying, well, besides, it's okay for women to be bald. Look, I mean, the whole goal here clearly is to no longer, to rewrite what it means to be feminine. Clearly we still associate long hair with femininity, and they have a problem with that. It's just nuts.
Yeah, there's another passage here. Let me read it again from The Witches. The old version, the original version, which, by the way, everyone should be buying used original
Right.
printings of these books because they're going to be worth something. Even if she is working as a cashier in a supermarket or typing letters for a businessman. That's the old version. Here's the new version. Even if she is working as a top scientist or running a business. Because if girls don't hear from Roald Dahl that a woman can grow up and be a scientist or running a business, I guess you're going to be consigned to working in a supermarket. That's what we're supposed to learn here?
Well, and it's also just dumb because, for decades now, women have been outpacing men, educationally and in, various other fields. I mean, there's absolutely no danger here of women getting, messages that are limiting, their potential from the culture. At the very least, if those messages are still out there, it's not stopping women because their educational attainment has surpassed men for a long time. And, men's life expectancy and other things have been, going way down, and where women have been, comparatively thriving. So, it's just like I said, it's offensive not just because they're trying to establish new norms. It's because they're pretending that they have to inveigh against damaging norms that no longer exist.
Mark Hemingway, thanks for joining us on this. I can't say it enough. Go out and buy original copies of Roald Dahl's classics, and it's your new retirement plan, everybody. I'm sure they're gonna be worth quite a bit more. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight. You're watching Salem News.